Welcome to the show, Ira. Really excited to have you on. I think you are the first person in over 100 podcasts we've had on that is also a hiring expert, super into hiring like I am, maybe even senior to me. So I'm really excited to have you on. Please let the audience know about your background and what you're doing today.
I appreciate it, and thanks very much for having me. I've been looking forward to this very much. As you said, my name's Ira Wolfe. My company is Success Performance Solution, been in business for the last 25 years. We primarily focus on pre-employment and leadership assessments. That's been my niche. Somehow I just fell into that. I guess I like the diagnostics. Prior to that, I was actually a dentist. If anybody wants to go up and watch my TED Talk, which was Make Change Work for You, in it, I basically started out by saying I loved everything about dentistry but dentistry. And so I made a change. What I really liked about at that point was working with people. I loved running the business. I know you have a lot of entrepreneurs on the show. I loved that part of the business, but I just didn't like what I delivered. So I got out 25 years ago. I sold the practice. I was only in my 40s. And I've been doing this ever since. So we focus on pre-employment and leadership testing.
Wow, that's great. So what's your opinion of where we are in this hiring market today with, COVID and people working remote and, all the economic challenges that are going on?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's challenging. I mean, it's just like turning on the news. It depends on which station you're on, how bad or how good it is, and what the problem is and what the solution is. The economy is very, very strange. I'm sure you don't have to be an expert to figure that out. If you and I talked in the end of February, maybe the beginning of March of this year, 2020, right when the pandemic was starting to gain some steam, I would have told you that based on my experience, and I've had a couple years behind me, that especially 9/11, 2008, that the economy would crash, everybody would freeze. And, I'd encourage people at that point to train, don't stop training. Don't pull your training back. It's a good time, a good opportunity to support your people. And that's still true to this day. What I didn't expect was that my business in the second quarter, now again, I'm in the hiring business, pre-employment leadership testing, would increase by 50%. While we were laying off 15, 20 million people, unemployment rate was 40, now 50 plus million people unemployed, that my business would increase basically 50%. And part of that is there's a thriving, just look at the stock market, there's a thriving part of the economy that is still busy, and people are still struggling hiring people. They need more people. Call centers, transportation, technology, some technology, healthcare. I just lucked out this time because I wasn't in entertainment. I don't have a lot of hospitality clients. I don't have anybody in the theater. I basically just ended up with and the manufacturers I had actually had DoD contracts, so they were transforming. So I'm embarrassed to say that, I'm good. I'm grateful that I'm good. I'm also sad because there's a lot of people that are just out of work, and I'm not so sure where the economy, where those industries are going to come back. And I think what I've been talking about in my book, Recruiting in the Age of Globalization, I talked a lot about technology not taking away jobs, but forcing people to learn new skills. And that skills gap that we've talked about, not me, but McKinsey and Deloitte for years and years and years, for at least since the early 90s, was going to accelerate because things were changing fast. Automation wasn't going to replace people, but it was going to change the way we got work done. And in doing so, we all were going to need those skills. And overnight, in March, millions of people were sent home, and they had to learn digital literacy skills. They had to become savvy at doing this. And not only did they have to learn how to present themselves, not only communication skills, but they had to become their own IT department. Is they couldn't call and go, I hate this stuff. Let's call David up, and he'll help set up Zoom. And hey, this isn't working. My mic's not working. I can't get my sound on. Let's call IT. Well, you all of a sudden everybody became their own IT department, their own maintenance department. They became the parent, the caregiver. They became everything at one time. So the economy's strange because there's a portion thriving and people are hiring like crazy, and there's another portion that we just don't know. No one knows. Everybody's guessing. I heard this early on by General. He was over. I'm drawing a blank on his name. He was over in Afghanistan. Crystal.
McChrystal or whatever.
McChrystal, yeah. And he was being interviewed, and this was pretty early on. This was like maybe March or early April. And he said, despite all the logistics and despite all their planning and all they did, not and parlaying that into where we were, what advice could he give for this? He said, we're all faking it till we make it. And I was like, well, that's good to hear, because that's certainly how we all felt.
Yeah, I think I've heard that. It's, the best battle plans, they're still never right because there's changing conditions. So are you finding that with your clients that we're having difficulty finding good people to hire, that now they have a lot more candidates to consider whether or not those candidates are qualified?
Yeah. Okay. So let me unpack that. There's a couple parts to that question. One is, are they having trouble finding people? And the answer is yes. And again, it depends on what what industry they're in. It also depends, we're right now at that edge of that people are getting paid more than, on unemployment than they were, while they were working. And we won't go into the political aspects of that. And I'm not sure that had a huge effect from what I'm seeing. And I think that some jobs people needed it. I mean, again, hospitality, entertainment industries, and a lot of those, transportation, but I don't think that was the reason. But there were people that were, there are companies that were really still struggling. And I'll give you a great example. I just got called, in fact, this afternoon, I have to finish up the proposal. I got a call from a small business owner. He has less than 75 employees. He's out in central states. And he told me that they've tried for 3 or 4 months. They thought they finally would be able to break through this. They have 3 proposals sitting on their desk worth $120 million that he cannot sign off on because he does not have superintendents, project managers, and tradespeople to fulfill them. We got 50 million people unemployed. And here's somebody, a small business owner with $120 million of business. And he's not looking in the central states. He's looking in California, is one location. He's looking in Pennsylvania, not too far from me. It actually was interesting, about 30 minutes from me. And I forget where the other location is. But these are all across the country in different states and different regions, in states that have enormously high unemployment rates, including my state. And yet they can't find people. And I hear that story over and over and over again. The flip side of that is that there are a lot of people unemployed and there are a lot of people looking for jobs. So where before someone would get 25 to 50 responses from Indeed, and this is true. I got called from a client that he got 1,300 applications in 24 hours. He was lucky if he got 25 in a month before. And he had the same trouble. I mean, out of the 25, there might have been 1 or 2 that were, qualified, that he felt that met his qualifications. But 1,300, and here's the problem: a lot of small businesses, and especially a lot of entrepreneurs, start out that don't have an HR person. They don't have a system in place. They basically post a job on a job board. They get applications. They get them by email. They take the emails. They put them in the spreadsheet, and they don't have the manpower. Why would you do that with so many, with 1,300 applications, with 100 applications, with 200 applications? So the systems and the processes that are in place, people just get overwhelmed. And so there's 2 ends of the spectrum. Is the analogy I said is, think of the needle in the haystack, which you and I have talked about and know about for years, is that the talent's there. And then somebody dumps 10 ton of hay on top of the stack. And within each stack, there's 1 or 2 diamonds in the rough. But the problem is there's a lot more hay, and you have to have a system to be able to get through that quickly and identify that. So there's two problems we have. I hear some people are still struggling to find people, and I hear other people that are overwhelmed with the number of applications, not necessarily qualified candidates, but applications.
Well, let's talk about that needle in the haystack thing. So this is your expertise. This is your expertise of figuring out who is really that good match. And what is your proposed system or the things that you've learned that really stand out that people need to do to make certain they don't make a mistake?
No, and that's the $1 million or multi-million-dollar question in my client's case, the $120 million question. Yeah. And I'll just walk down. I mean, what we're proposing is, I'll say this, my recommendation will be to have some type of an applicant tracking system, an ATS, up front. Now, I'm not a huge fan of those because technology does not solve the problem. It's how we use the technology. So if you're buying a system saying, oh, this is going to identify our top performers, you're wrong. What it's going to do is it's going to eliminate the tedious part of getting getting 1,000 or 100 or 5,000 emails, and then sifting through all the resumes. So there are ways to set up qualifying questions to weed out the people who don't fit. In the system, one of the systems that we recommend, we actually can assign points to every answer. So if you do need somebody who's licensed in the state of Pennsylvania or California or South Dakota, wherever it might be, you can assign 10 points. So even though somebody may have the qualifications, you can quickly do a sort and find out where they fall. So that's one way to quickly get to weed out all that extra hay that's in there. Beyond that, I am a big fan of pre-employment leadership assessments. It's a third party, and it's objective data. Now, assuming that you're using a good one, and I know you do, and we do, we look at validated ones, reliable, and they're job specific. That I don't recommend, and I'll hold this, I don't recommend using those with the application. You still need some type of screening process because it's a horrible candidate experience to say, hey, fill out this application and take our test because we don't want to be bothered talking to people who don't qualify. One is applicants have caught on, and there's a lot of resentment going on. The talent board released their annual report, and the last one, which came out in January, revealed that candidate resentment, which is a pretty strong word, it's not just dissatisfaction, resentment was up 40% in the last 4 years. So despite all the technology and people paying attention and we need better reviews on Glassdoor and Indeed and Google, we need to focus on this. Resentment went up 40% because people relied on the technology. They threw more and more hurdles in front of the candidate that they had to fill out a long application. They had to answer all these questions, and then they fell into the black hole and they didn't hear from the company. So there needs to be a way to process the information and not only identify who the top performers are, but to get to respond to them quickly. I've said this I've been interviewed a lot and doing a lot of talking, a lot of writing. And I said, the good news is to everybody that's listening out there, that the bar is so low that you can fall over it to be better than competitors. The bar is so low on candidate experience, on having a short application and being able to connect with that person right up front. And again, and then go delve into a little bit deeper. And then not necessarily to throw an assessment out in front, but hey, we're interested in talking to you, David. Looks like you had a good resume, have a couple questions for you. At the end of a 5-minute screen is like, hey, we'd like for you to go to the next step, and we have an application. And this is for both you and us, because we want to make sure you fit into our culture, fit on your team. We assign you to the right manager. What that take 30 seconds to explain that? That's the conversation you have. And then with our clients, we have about a 98% completion rate on assessments, and that high on applications. Companies that don't, when we start with a client, they're often at a 50% completion rate on an application, which means somebody's interested in applying. They started out, they get so frustrated or confused that they abandon it. It's cart abandonment.
Let me ask you a question, so make sure I'm following. And part of the reason is that I had a company call me. They're interested in potentially working with me, and they were using an assessment, quite frankly, just because it was inexpensive and it would help them sort some things out. And then they never paid any attention to the information afterwards. And so to me, that didn't have a lot of value. But when so somebody sends you a resume, and are you then having them answer a brief survey or something? So you've got some of those weighted questions being answered up front before you do the phone screen?
We suggest both, but what happens is in the platform that we're using, and it's pretty common in a lot of platforms, that somebody could fill out an application or a resume. By the way, that's important. You shouldn't ask them to do both. If they can upload the resume, don't ask them to fill out the same information in a bunch of fields. That you're going to have a large abandonment. But once they get to that point, then they're immediately taken to some questions, and you can make the questions part of the application. So some of the questions are, how many years of experience do you have? So people can assign that. But if they have, let's say you're preferably looking for somebody that has a minimum of 2 years. If they have less than 1 year, they're excluded. So they could be rejected. The candidate doesn't know that until you make that final decision. But they are put into a separate folder, disqualified. So between 1 and 3 years, you can assign 5 points. Between 4 and 7 years, you can assign 10 points. So you can do that for that. How many years of education do you have? Do you have an associate degree? Do you have a diploma? Do you have a 4-year degree? Do you have a specialty certificate? And you can assign different points. But you can also do open-ended questions. And the open-ended questions are a little bit tougher to rate, in points. So you can figure out different ways. One of the ways we did it is if they need to have proficiency, for instance, like in Microsoft Office products. So, the question is, have you used Microsoft Word or Excel? And it's a yes or no answer, which ultimately in today's market doesn't qualify or disqualify anybody. But you can say, rate yourself, beginner, intermediate, advanced. And now people will lie, but they'll probably lie. They tend to lie as one notch up. So if they're a beginner, they might put they're intermediate. And if they're intermediate, they might put advanced. But at least it gives you a chance, and you can weight those. It could be 5, 10, and 15 points for each of those. So what happens is if you ask the questions in a way that you can assign points, then all you have to do is click the button and sort everybody, and you go to the people who have 100 points, and maybe your cutoff is 75, and then if you don't find anybody in there, you can go down a little bit. But what it does is it eliminates everybody who had 75 or 50 or less points. So that would be one way to do it. We've also.
So does that mean you ask them to upload the resume and then just answer this brief survey with the weighted questions?
Yeah, that's not my ideal way, but that's because companies have purchased and they're using an ATS, and they can't, it's only, how many sacred cows can we kill? Or not kill, how many sacred cows can we move out of the way at the same time? So my first goal is to say, have a shorter application, or give people the option to upload a resume, but don't do both. Don't force your hand on doing both of those. Ideally is, and I was just on a call the other day when we were talking about this, ideally, we shouldn't be using the application at all. The application is hanging around since 1950. And all we did was put it online, and then we shortened it and we eliminated a couple things and took out the Social Security and what gender are you and what's your birthday. So we've taken the same model. What we need to do, the ideal thing is to have 5 questions. Identify the 5 essential skills that are required for the job. If they have to be on site, then that's one of them. If they can work from remote, that's another one. Are they licensed in your state? Do they, and now we get into the dicey ones. Do they have a 4-year degree? Why do they need a 4-year degree? Because the last 2 people we hired that didn't work out. Now, that doesn't mean they need a 4-year degree. Because I've always gotten into this with my clients. What if they have a 2-year associate degree but 20 years of experience? Oh yeah, we'd look at them. Okay, so they don't need a 4-year degree. They need a 2-year degree and an X amount of experience, and it forces people to think. So by 5 questions, and again, it's not a magic number. It could be 4, it could be 7, but somewhere you could qualify or disqualify the majority of people. And that's the problem that we're having, is people are desperate and they're applying to jobs that they're completely unqualified for. Now, can people lie? Sure, but they lie in the interview, they lie in the resume, they lie all the other times. But at least it's going to weed out a number of people if you're doing that smart. Then, if they accept that, it's they met the qualifications. And even after that there are companies, I just talked with a company the other day, they will actually, after those 5 questions, if they qualify, they will immediately have that person sign up for an interview, or immediately have assign them to a recruiter or somebody in a call, almost not a call center, but a recruiter, to do an immediate screen. If someone is qualified and reaches a threshold, immediately they basically go on and go, hey, thanks, David, for applying. We'd really like to talk to you now. Do you have 5 minutes? And
Yeah.
that's where it is. And it's not through a chatbot. I mean, you could do it through a chatbot, which is one way to do it. Or
Yeah, but that's not the same. That's
yeah,
just not. Yeah.
the alternative is you say, we don't have enough people to do this, and we can't afford this company. But what you can do is you can give them the option to schedule. So immediately, hey, you qualified. Here are slots, and here's a 10-minute slot. Do it at your convenience, and you immediately got them on the books. So, going back to the question about the resume and application or resume, I think both of them need to be thrown out. It's a series of screening questions. Am I suggesting you hire people based on those 5 questions? Absolutely not. But now you've also, in a world of customer experience, you basically have qualified the person, engage them, because the fact is just that you responded to them after 5 questions, you differentiated yourself, and the fact that you responded to them, they didn't fall into the black hole, is a huge improvement. As I said, the bar is so low, you can fall over it. That's all you need to do. And you will at least attract, that word gets out, by the way. People tell that story because it's so bad. The application process is really embarrassing. And HR, a lot of the technology, and I said, I'm not a fan, I resell an ATS. I'm a fan of using technology, but I'm also not, I don't like it. They were designed for the employer. They were designed to facilitate screening from the employer side. They were not designed to be in the world we live in now, which is about the customer experience. So there are a few companies out there that are rethinking it, but companies are still stuck. Well, we need an application, we need a resume. This doesn't fit into the way we did it. And like everything else, throughout the way you did it. The way we did things in normal times will not work in the world we live in now.
Yeah. And even in these times, good people aren't going to sit around and do nothing. I mean, you want self-starters. You want people that are going to move. So when they send it in, they'd like a response. The fact that you give a quick response, engage, give them an opportunity to schedule a call, that's huge. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, good people are still in high demand. That has not gone away. And what's happened is a lot of companies slowed down for that little bit, and they let some people go. And again, another instance. And I don't know what happened with the pandemic, but we went international. I've always had that opportunity. But a small resort on the island of Maldives. We're trying to get. Hopefully, they'll allow Americans back into their, into Europe one of these days, and in the country, and we'll be safe to fly. But there was a resort. They had 200 employees, and they were rebranding. They took this time to rebrand, to rethink, and obviously everybody was out on furloughed or laid off. I don't know what their term was, but what they decided was they're going to do a soft reopening, and they're only hiring 50 people back. And they wanted a way to identify who are the 50 people they should bring back first, who's going to be suited for their new brand, for their new culture. And so they still had these 200 people, but essentially they were using the screening test. Now that wasn't about hiring, but is how can we identify the people that we should be engaging with first, bringing back, who has the highest potential. And that's not the only call I've gotten. There was another one, a group down in I think it was in Virginia, from Williamsburg area, and they had 600 employees, and they were going to do a soft opening catering business, and they were going to bring back 100 or 200 people, but not everybody was going to be invited back. So they were trying to identify that. So again, this is what's going on in the space. So they're good people still have an opportunity, to get hired or get rehired by their companies once they reopen. But it's still a struggle. There's still a skills gap.
Why wouldn't they know that from working with the people? I mean, if they're doing a good job and they have a strong culture and they're engaging with their people, why wouldn't they be able to make that hard decision just looking at how the person has performed, how they interact with others, that type of thing, versus looking at a test?
Without being politically incorrect, or just being polite, didn't see the need to it. I mean, it was a matter, we're in hospitality, we're in manufacturing, we're in healthcare. That's not the way we do it around here. I'm teaching a course, and it was a great opportunity, although it's consumed a ton of my time, going into academia. But there's a new graduate program at a college that actually it's my alma mater, but one of my alma maters. And they're starting a leadership program, and I've been hired to create a course in organizational change. You talk about timeliness. You talk about a time to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of blue ocean strategy. I don't know if you're
I am familiar with it,
yeah.
but you can explain it to the audience. So why don't you go ahead?
So blue ocean strategy, there's a red ocean and there's a blue ocean, and you want to be in the blue ocean, and that's where there's a lot of opportunity. It's open seas, it's clear waters, and you basically differentiate yourself by what are the things that other companies aren't doing? What do you do well? How can I create more value? It's about creating value for your customer, and what we're talking about is value for the candidates, value for your employees. The red ocean thrives on two different dimensions, and where you get the red, it's based on competition. That this shark infested waters. It's either you have a unique differentiation. At one time you allowed people to work from home. You have the highest salary. You got the best benefits. You have a pool table. You have a cafeteria. All those things that people competed on that differentiated you for a short time. Or you're cheap. You basically cut your fee. So it's either I pay, in our world, in recruitment and hiring, you either pay people, give them more benefits, or basically to have high turnover. I don't know what the low end is. You don't pay them enough, and then you accept that because you bench. Here's an interesting thing that comes from blue ocean strategy. You benchmark yourself against the best practices in your industry. So I always say this, when I was in 8th grade, I was 5'8" and 220 pounds. My wrestling coach said, he looked at me and go, unlimited wrestler. So, I was a big kid, but I was as taller than all my friends. And at 13, I was 4 to 5 inches taller than my parents. I'm much taller than my younger brother. I was also at 13, I was basically 4 or 5 inches taller than my family. Most of my family was about that same height. You look at all the family pictures, I'm the tallest one of all my cousins. I had 15 cousins in my mother's side. I'm the tallest one at that point. But then all my friends sprouted up, and all of a sudden it's 6'5", 6'3", 6'2", 5'11". I am no longer the tallest person because I got outside of my family. What happens with benchmarking and best practices, and the danger of the red ocean from the blue ocean strategy, which we were talking about, is that when you compare yourself to the industry, when you say that in our industry, 75% turnover is normal, or 50% turnover is normal, or this is a service organization and we have to pay the lowest fee possible because our margins are only that big, you're basically, you get eaten by the sharks. There's nowhere to go. You either differentiate or cut your prices, or cut your value, whatever it might be. Where, the opportunity, going back, what your original question was, is why didn't companies do it? Because they benchmark themselves. I'm in hospitality. Everybody does this. And we do better than the shortest guy on the block. So, we do better. I remember going back, I was on the board I was actually a VP of a hospital, but prior to that, I was on the board of the hospital. And this was back, you'll remember this, I can tell from the gray hair, you were around, in the late 1999, 2000, we were in a similar basis. You couldn't find enough people to hire your job. One is job creation was crazy at that time. And in healthcare, crazy, we still have that problem. They couldn't find enough nurses. And on weekends, they were paying at the time, if nurses were making $20, $25 an hour, they were hiring traveling nurses and on-call nurses for $100 to $200 an hour because they needed people for the OR. And I said, why don't we raise our fees? Raise our rates. Even if you paid you were paying, let's say 20, raise it to 25. And they go, we can't do that. That'll set a bad standard. And even the largest hospital in our area, who wasn't having a problem hiring people, wasn't doing that. And so I had to get them through that. So I basically took them through, and their claim to fame was one other component, is we don't have high turnover. So I did a breakdown in nursing and housekeeping. Give you an example. It was in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Housekeeping, there were 17 people on the staff, relatively small hospital. 15 of them were there for 30 or more years. They had low turnover because there's only 2 positions that ever fluctuated. Within those 2 positions, they had 400% turnover. They couldn't keep anybody because every person they hired lasted 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 weeks. There was just a churn. In nursing, we took the same example and said, if you would, one is by paying some nurses $100 an hour, and the ones who showed up on a regular basis that your employees were getting 18 to 20, that's a problem. That's a morale problem. So part of it is, why don't we offer them more money? Why don't we create a bonus structure? But here was the answer, long way around this point. They compared themselves to the Michigan customer sentiment and to another group, Prescaney and another one that dealt in healthcare. Here's how low the bar was. Healthcare organizations at the time had a lower customer satisfaction rating than the post office and the IRS. Okay. I said, here's the problem, is that, there were so many people did not like hospitals. They did not like working in hospitals. They did not think your customer service was very good because you didn't have to do it. So why did all these companies not know this going forward? The problem is the bar has been pretty low in those organizations, and they lived in a little bit of a bubble. They benchmarked themselves against other competitors. Even within I was listening in Blue Oceans as a really good analysis. They've even taken hospitality industry into the premier, the Marriotts and the Four Seasons and the Intercontinentals and those groups. And then the budget. And there's a really interesting budget hotel. It's called Hotel M. I think they're in Europe. They're just starting to open up in the US. And they were going to be a 3-star. They were going to have a 5-star rating and a 3-star price. And they said, no, we're not competing with budgets. We're not going to be the best of a budget. We're going to have a place that somebody says, I don't care if I have a concierge. I don't care that I walk into this magnificent lobby. When I go to a hotel, I want to be greeted. I want to have a quick exit into my room. I want the room to be comfortable. I don't, yes, I want there to be a restaurant around, but if it's located downtown, there's restaurants everywhere. What do I really need to be comfortable and get rid of all this other stuff and stop competing against the other 3 and 2 stars? That's the message. That's what I'm trying to help my clients do. You don't have to double your fees. You don't have to do all these crazy bonuses. Yes, you have to create a good experience once you hire them. You have to make sure who your managers are. You have to give them updates. You have to let them know what your expectations are. You have to give them feedback. Yes, you have to do all that. The old days are gone. I wrote this. It's on LinkedIn. You can look it up. I wrote an obituary to Normal. And basically Normal died. He left behind constant and consistency, his family. It's going to be completely different, and we're moving forward. We don't know where it's going to go. It's going to evolve for a while. But to everybody listening out there, there's a huge amount of opportunity. There are people looking. There are a lot of good people looking. You have to create a brand that people want, a company that people want to work at, create an opportunity. Some people are going to be desperate and they're going to take any job. You don't necessarily want them. You want to help them, but they may not be the best employee in the long run. But there are ways to do it. And again, I keep saying it. I must have said it half a dozen times already. The bar is pretty low. You don't have to be really good. You just have to be better than the next guys and sort of stop, benchmark. Don't benchmark yourself against the competitor that you identify. Benchmark him against the people that are doing it really well, and see what you can do and stand out in your industry or in your region.
What are you finding are the biggest mistakes people are making when hiring?
Gosh, how long do we have?
Yeah. Well, we got like 5 minutes, maybe, or so. But
yeah, not knowing what they want. For example, and you're in this business too. I get 5 requests a day. Please send me costs on your testing. My response is, can you, thanks for contacting me. Can you give me a few more details? What's the job? What role are you playing? What are you looking to find out? If I can tell you, I can tell you. If I can ensure you that I can tell you everything you want to know, what is it? What are the top 5 things? And people are all over the board. We want them to be a self-starter, but follow the rules. That's a little conflicting. We want people who takes initiative, but doesn't do things without our asking. But we want people with a good attitude. We want them to be, have integrity. We want a positive attitude. We want them to be a self-starter, highly motivated, good team player. People go down a laundry list. We want them to be smart. Okay, define smart. What, how smart do they have to be on a scale of 1 to 10? What's smart mean? Because if you hire people who are a 10 and your managers are a 5, that won't go over well, because they're going to say, oh, this is simple, I can get it done, and go, no, you can't do that because you haven't been here for 5 years. It took the last guy, and it took me 5 years to learn this. You can't do it in 6 months. Well, yeah, some people can. So the biggest mistake goes back to, and that's why I go back to the screening questions. Sometimes going back to those 5 absolute essential requirements not transforms the business. It changes what you're looking for. It changes your recruitment. It changes your hiring. It changes how you manage them. And then once you identify that 5 or 6 or 7, you can identify what's important. Do we need to measure cognitive skills? We test for cognitive skills. We can test for personal interest. What are they motivated by? Money, career opportunity, learning, community. Are they motivated? Personality is an important part of that. What's their attitude? Do they have a positive attitude toward working with people? So many people use, I'm a big fan of the core part of our assessment is the big 5, which is OCEAN: openness, extroversion, agreeableness, or conscientiousness, agreeableness, and non-emotion. Do they don't get excited? So it's based on that 5. But so often people say, well, we need extroverts. We need people who are outgoing and good with people. So introverts aren't good with people. Have you ever met an extrovert that wasn't very good with people? Have you ever met an extrovert who was a good listener? So people stereotype what they want. They hired the last 2 people. They're really good. And so everybody in the future needs to be like that. And what's interesting is we'll often get the opportunity to say, hey, can we test our top 10 performers? What's interesting is the top 2 people are usually never clonable. They're not the people. They got there in a unique way. They got a pattern. They're super ambitious. They got a family story. There's something driving them that can't be cloned. And my common question to a lot of people is, if you could hire 10 more people like your top 1, excluding the revenues, their behavior, how they treat people, how they fit in, would you do it? And not 100% of the time, but most often I go, that's an interesting question. Probably not. Who would you hire? Your 3rd and 4th, 5th ranked person? That's usually where it is. It's usually the top 1 or 2 are mavericks. They got there in a special way. They've been in the business for 30 years. They have great connections. When you take all those factors out, who are the people that you should clone if you can clone? I'm not telling you to clone mediocre people. I'm telling you, get your 5 top performers and start at number 3. What do 3, 4, and 5 have in common? Your simple answer to your question was, people don't know what they want.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So, Ira, how can people learn more about you, what you're doing, your book? What do you recommend?
Sure. Lots of ways you can contact me. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. So you can go to LinkedIn, Ira Wolfe, as simple as that. My personal website is irawolfe.com. That's easy. My business is. And if you want to learn a little bit about the philosophy, what I was talking about change, my new book, it's actually in the second edition, Recruiting in the Age of Googlization. You can get it on Amazon, but I got a better deal. You can go to besthrbook.com. Yes, I did get that domain, besthrbook.com. And you can order it for free. Basically, you just pay a couple bucks on shipping, and we're still giving away some books for free. So besthrbook.com, and please connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter, or reach out to me. Happy to continue this conversation anytime.
Oh, that sounds great. I mean, I could talk to with you all day. We hit the tip of the iceberg on this, but
barely.
Yeah, sounds like you're doing some great stuff. I love some of the advice. So thank you very much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and good luck, everyone. Stay safe.